hoping that we can move on to something else. You know, oh my
Something else,
gosh,
please.
it's so necessary. Hey, so I just hit the live button. I don't know that anyone will come on and watch, but I'll then have a
Yeah,
recording of it. It's nice. It's
yeah,
always fun to have conversations and talk a little bit about
yeah. It's definitely important to record
different
it because I'm
things.
gonna forget everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, hey, so you and I were, so you reached out to me. You were watching a few videos and then you reached out with, I remember several months ago with a few comments about different things.
Yeah,
And do you remember, did you just stumble upon the videos?
yeah. I watched a couple of them. I think I watched she's like yelling at you why Chinese can't speak Chinese.
Yeah.
I guess I look Chinese. And I go to Japan, they're like, oh, you look Japanese. And I go to Korea and they're
No,
like,
you
you
don't
look,
look Japanese, I don't
you look
think. You don't
Japanese.
think, yeah, no. No, but it is interesting, that Korean and and um I mean, Chinese. It's a really large country, and there are lots of different phenotypes and facial and body features. So just depending on where you go, which is not really true in Korea,
Yeah.
although the
It is
indigenous
different.
peoples of Korea, I
Well,
think,
it's
but
kind of interesting how like Korea is so homogeneous, kind of. They're like really
yeah,
similar. And if you go to China, it's completely different, different language. So I was born in Korea.
uh
Um,
huh.
we immigrated to U.S. when I was 11. Oh no, no, it was 10, I think. And
So you,
years, I was like 11, 12, I think. And then after some college, I went to Asia to work, and I worked in IT, and then all different kind of jobs. So what's really kind of interesting, what kind of I guess sets me apart, well, different, not in a good way, but is that usually when Westerners or even Korean Americans or Chinese Americans go back to Asia, they go to a position or work that's pretty established level, like at least a managerial level.
mm-hmm.
Whereas I actually, so there are different hierarchies. There's staff, assistant manager, manager, general manager, executive general manager, assistant director, director, executive director, and CEO, right? So that's like the same hierarchy for almost all Asian companies, right?
Yeah,
So what's really interesting is socially, so if I'm like a manager, like socially, they would call me outside of work. They would be like, they wouldn't call me by my name. They would call me by my manager Lee or director Lee or something, right? So I had to step through every single little hierarchy because
uh
I
huh.
started from the bottom. So that's kind of really unique in that a lot of the expats don't get to experience that bottom, what
Yeah,
the employees go through. So that I had that unique experience, and also I had to compare how I had the experience, I had the pleasure of comparing how Western companies and Asian companies are different because I work for a German company and different Western companies as well. So
so
I
what
just
would you say? What would you say? So at the bottom, so
yeah.
what would you say are the primary differences?
Well, most the biggest difference is control versus non-control. So Western companies tend to give you less control and give you sort of like general guidelines on what you have to do and what your roles and responsibilities are. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
Asian companies are very structured
Mm-hmm.
and how they evaluate employees, and not only that, how your position within the company directly translates to your outside life actually. So when I was like in especially in like a director level, everybody used to call me director Lee. Like I wouldn't hear my name for like months.
Uh-huh.
So you kind of like get this notion that you're director lead, and then you have to act certain way and talk certain way, and which relates to drinking thing too. Because you can't get drunk in front of you know, your subordinates, or so to speak. And
Uh-huh.
so you develop this kind of fake identity,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you step out of it, and when you're with your friends, all that built up stress kind of thing like just unleashes, and you get drunk, and you get try to relieve all the stress during that time. So it's two different identities that they have to live by in a sense. I
Mm-hmm.
feel most Asians, I think all Asians or Eastern Asians, if they're in corporate culture, which they are mostly, they have to live by that.
Yeah, that's a big part. You know, in the West, we pride ourselves, or what's really important is being able to be yourself in all environments, right? Like at work,
You know?
just be yourself, and that's how you can be successful, right? In the West, and that
Act same at,
yeah, and
yeah,
that's not
act
true.
same at home. Act same as as you do at home, as you do at work. But in Asia, you cannot do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's so fascinating. Um, I mean, it's two completely different ways
Yes.
of thinking about things. You know,
Well, the
completely
whole
different.
entire structure of the society is completely different.
Yeah.
And when I was young, I always had this thought like, why am I like half white, half Asian? Kind of like,
Hmm.
so to speak, I'm like right down the middle, which is not only linguistically in Korean, but like culturally and stuff. I always wondered why, and
Hmm.
I didn't really get that answer till recently, because in order to, let's say for example, gun control law, let's say,
Hmm.
which is a big thing in the U.S. and like, and in Korea, there are no guns and there's much less crime, right? So, like, what are the in order to find out like which one is better, or for example, let's say if we're going to get rid of all the guns U.S., then how are we going to do? How are we going to defend ourselves, for example,
Hmm.
against forces that might harm us? And if you don't have an example where it works, of the society where it works, that you could be like, oh, this might work, so we can replace it this way. If you don't know that part of it, if you don't have any idea of it, then you can't really find an answer to it. And
Yeah.
if you don't have an answer, you can't change it. So that's what I think.
Okay, so both your parents are Korean,
Yeah,
and then so you went to university here in the United States.
yeah. I went to University of Maryland, but for some reason, school doesn't school didn't really attract me for some reason, like
Uh
books
huh.
and reading.
Yeah.
I would buy a book and skim through it and be like, okay, this is stupid, and so
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Good for
like
you.
arrogant, I guess. And so like I would go into a psychology class and be like, this doesn't make any sense. I would never go back to it. So I had to learn things on my own mostly, um,
Uh huh.
and even with my jobs, nobody really taught me or trained me. They just do stuff at me, and I just had to learn it myself. So
Yeah.
that's how I kind of got it. But I grew up in, my middle school was predominantly white. My high school was predominantly white. So, it's, but like when I was like, I think I was like 28. I went to a fortune teller in Korea with my friend, and this guy doesn't know anything about me, right? And he looks at me, he goes, "He's white." I'm like, "What?" So I guess I kind of give up that vibe of non-structure, like
Yeah.
non-conformity, sort of. So
What is the word? What did he say to you? The
pegging, which
fortune.
is pegging means white guy. So
Yeah, white guy. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he
It's
just
really
he.
Yeah, it is so. But what that really means, is that, um, like you're able to move in and out of different cultures,
Yeah,
right?
and not give a shit, basically.
Yeah, yeah, which is key. You know, not many people can do that. I was having a conversation with someone earlier today about that, about the ability of some people to do that. And in this global world that we're in, we
Yeah,
can live in so many different places, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um, hey, so let me ask you this. So you and I, a couple days ago, we were emailing back and forth about drinking
Right.
and in this idea, and like drinking culture, and so walk me through some of that, because you know I
Um,
know it, but you know it's
yeah.
kind of interesting hearing it from you, who's like able to talk about it at different stages in an organization.
Well, drinking is a major part of Asian culture.
Yeah, listen, Koreans drink more than any per capita than anybody else. You know, hard liquor anyway.
Or liquor, yes, absolutely. By
Yeah,
far, because
yeah,
there's a company called Diageo. They own like they're one of the biggest liquor companies in the world, and their
yeah,
market share is like 90% comes from Korea or something. So,
yeah,
but you know, Japanese drink a lot too, um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
Chinese
yeah,
drink a
yeah.
lot. Chinese drink a lot.
As do the Russians. You know, they all have
Well,
their own.
yes, yes, but I mean, Russians, you give them the excuse of the weather, but I
Yeah,
mean, the amount of liquor Chinese drink when they're eating is just, and they drink that really strong stuff.
the soju.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
weird, the Chinese soju, which is like 80 proof or something. Um,
But so
so
your
yeah,
but your idea is that there a lot of it is related to stress, like releasing stress.
well, it starts that way, but you know, it starts, or usually starts at company like dinner, usually for everyone. Well, before, if you went to college, I guess it starts in college,
Mm-hmm.
but that translates to like all the dates that you had with girls, most of the dates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, most of the times you get together with your friends, um, and most of the after work, you know, dinners and whatever get-togethers you have with your coworkers, which is basically your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, I mean, I literally drank literally 30 days in a month, 1 month when I was young.
Wow.
And by the time, I mean, I was really healthy,
Wow.
nice and clean, but
That's amazing.
I, by the time, like, the end of it, you're just like, your stomach is just gone. You can't even taste the alcohol because
Mm-hmm.
taste buds in your tongue are burnt. But it just, it's just part of like, and it's kind of rude not to drink. So they
Mm-hmm.
really peer pressure you to drink.
Hey, how is that? So let me ask you this. How how does the peer pressure work? Because every culture is a little different, right? Like in Russia, for example, you when the first person stops drinking, everybody stops.
Oh, is that
So
right?
yeah, so if you're drinking with your friends and if you walk away, they all have to stop. And so the pressure is to keep going. Nobody wants to be the one that ruins the party.
Right.
So that keeps everybody drinking a lot. You know, how does that work in Korea?
Well, it's like it's worse in Korea because you have this age hierarchy
Uh huh.
and also you have the social hierarchy play. So, like, if you're higher than and older, you could be like, "Oh, I can't drink," and they won't really say anything. But usually, I hung out with older crowds, and so if I don't drink, they'll be like, "Dude, you're drinking." I'm like, "No, I'm not." They're like, "Drink." I'm like, "All right."
Yeah.
That's how it usually. And then a couple of alcohols in, and then it's okay, and then you keep, you know, alcohol drinks itself. So,
And then
um,
you just keep going.
and then you just keep going until
Yeah.
you can't do it anymore. But you know, there's a lot of entertainment factor involved in it as well. I don't know how much you've traveled to Asia, but there's a lot of fun things to do when you're drinking in Asia. So
Mm-hmm.
not so. I guess the question of moral is different from
Mm-hmm.
here than there because the culture is completely different. And like what you would think that's kind of like immoral here is completely fine over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
um,
saw that in Japan a lot, especially with
well,
regard to like sexuality and stuff.
well,
Really.
yeah, sexuality and also like just drinking culture where you would go to these room salons, which is like you have a partner, a female partner that sits next to you and
Yeah.
keeps you company when you're drinking. And there could be absolutely usually there's no sexual thing at all, but I mean it could be. I mean there could be skinship and stuff, but it's not considered immoral because
Yeah.
what she's doing is very professional. She's looking at you as a basically a money bag.
Right. And
Want to
so
keep you
in
coming.
her right, so and then in her job in that sense for the men anyway, and her job is to keep you drinking, keep you happy, keep you talking, and then
and
at the
and
end of the night you pay some kind of a tip
right, and
as a
then
thank
you
you.
you ask for her again next time you come to that store.
Yeah.
That's her goal. But these girls are making $10,000, $20,000 a month
Yeah.
in cash. So some of them make like $50,000 a month in cash. So
Yeah.
and they're usually making more money than the customer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
and the
amazing.
guys don't know that, and you try to
Yeah.
impress her with these kind of money, and she's probably like,
Yeah.
and they
So
usually have outside boyfriends and
yeah.
sugar
So
daddies
you're
and
okay. So you're in these environments at the lower level, right? You're in this environment with your work colleagues,
right.
and so lots of people drink with work colleagues, right? I mean, this is a big thing. And why is that? Is that because these are your? It's not because they're your primary friendships.
Well,
Like,
they have this thing called 회식, which is like a after work get together.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
you do it in teams and divisions, and sometimes you do it the whole company, and just for no reason at all. But but
mm-hmm,
it's a way to you know make the team stronger by
mm-hmm.
breaking the
Yeah,
bond of that front bond that everybody has with each other, especially in Asian culture. So the purpose is to do that, but a lot of it ends up just being habitual drinking later.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, especially for like manufacturing companies where the working conditions are not in the office, in the factory and stuff, it becomes, habitual drinking, literally. So,
yeah. It's so crazy, right? I mean, it's so.
yeah.
And how much is that? How much is that discussed as a, I don't know, just as an issue that would be seen or could be seen as problematic.
Well, lots of it changed, especially with like IT companies. Now they don't have that many drinking culture anymore, but still, it's very, very strong in finance and manufacturing, other areas of industry where it's very, very it's very encouraged actually to keep this team spirit going for certain
Mm-hmm.
groups. But like in like here, like we have other options of like going to a park, playing sports together often, things like that. But those kind of
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure is not in Asia. Well, it's not in Japan and Korea at least as much. So a lot of it just ends up being, dinner and then drinking and then whoever wants to go home first, bye bye. And then the second, whoever the group that's left over goes to second round and third round and the fourth round, and behavior gets worse and worse and worse. And then memory gets worse, and then you end up somehow at home.
It's amazing that. And then the next day you're back at work in the morning,
You're back in the work in the morning, and usually in the morning before lunch, the alcohol is still in your system, so you're working off the alcohol.
Yeah.
After lunch, you're just like,
Hey, so I was asking, one thing I noticed in Japan um, is that,
Sorry, I missed
wait,
that.
hang on.
Could you say it again?
Siri just started talking to me. It's like, oh my God.
Like I'm here, I'm listening.
See, yeah, I'm always ready. The great control. Hey, so one thing I noticed in Japan is like when I was in Tokyo and I'd be out kind of late, and the later it got, the more drunk people there were. I could notice, right? Because men in particular were getting more and more drunk, and then I would notice men being more physical with one another as they got more drunk.
Yeah.
And so you and I know we went back and forth on this, but it seems to me that alcohol is one of those things that allows people, it breaks our inhibitions,
Yeah.
and allows us to just act toward people and do things like maybe dance or something, do things we would not normally do.
Sure.
And I I really noted how Japanese men were not physical at all until they got drunk, and then they were really, really physical. Like really hanging on each other, and like, oh my gosh.
Well, like I said, in Japan, I had a couple experiences of drinking with my Japanese friends, and only a couple of times did I get really drunk. But we usually in Korea, at least, when you get drunk with some group of men, next day you're like, oh, you okay? Let's
Yeah.
go there's that
Yeah.
bonding is there.
Yeah.
Translates next day immediately, and then maybe fades away until you drink again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in Japan, it was like, because I was like, we got drunk together. We, that's what men do. We do bad things together and we get close to each other. And in Japan, it was more like, I was like, oh, hi, you okay? And they were like completely like, they were kind of like embarrassed about like their behavior, last night's behavior, which was very odd for me because that kind of defeats the whole purpose of that event.
Of of having that experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so I thought about that, and I think Japanese men are, when they drink, like that kind of behavior, because they have so much stress in a sense.
Yeah.
Like Korean men, at least they have that drinking bonding friends, right?
Yeah.
Japanese men, they don't even have that drinking bonding friends. So they're literally like by themselves, and then they get drunk, and then they express all that emotion out when they're drunk. And then next day they're by themselves again, and they don't have that connection.
Yeah.
And I really felt for them because I kind of saw that.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's why Japanese men are very, very, well, Japanese in general kind of like not happy, but society as a whole is kind of like in this deep depression.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that it's not something that I talk about. I have a little bit with Japanese friends and colleagues, but one thing that I was struck by, and I'm one of these people who, I travel a lot, and I'm very careful about making generalizations.
Right.
Because I travel, I'm careful. I get it. I understand when it's an observation I have versus something that's part of a culture, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that
also, you're white, so you can't say bad thing about Asians.
Yeah, exactly.
Me being an Asian, I can say bad thing about. And me being an Asian, I'm already hated, or looked at an Asian here anyway. So but go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, so I was struck by. I felt like Japanese men had the lowest levels of testosterone of men anywhere I'd ever experienced. It's like what we would typically respond to as masculinity, kind of masculine behavior, or just, it's a subtle thing, right? It's like, so men who are gay, we have this idea that, men who are gay are really effeminate. And it's like, no, well, some are, but most men who are gay are no different than any men who are not gay. I mean, you wouldn't know who is and is not gay. It's fine. But there is this small segment of a population where men exhibit certain behaviors, which are not women's behaviors, right? It's not even women. It's just unique. And it's true. I've seen this everywhere in the world I've ever traveled. I pick out certain men that I say, okay, there's that characteristic, right? In Japan, everywhere I turned, I saw men who seemed to have some degree of this quality that was just higher or more pronounced than anywhere else in the world. So I think I talk about it as testosterone, like, wow.
Yeah. What I thought was like, I totally sympathize with my Japanese friends in a sense, and Japanese men in general, because there's no sense of I don't want to say love because that's too harsh, but like nobody really builds their confidence up in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't really happen unless you're like top tier in the society. Like everybody else is just like, oh, even from school, you're like obedience. You gotta be structured. Sacrifice. You gotta conform, and nobody really gives you compliments in Japan. And like for example, like Koreans never eat alone. They always ask someone to eat with them during lunchtime, right? So you hardly see people eating by themselves. But in Japan, it's the opposite. Like it's kind of rude to ask someone in Japan to eat with them.
Yeah.
Just in case they have to say no. You don't want to make them say no, and they're like oversensitive about this, so they don't ask other people to eat with them, and they all eat them by themselves.
Yeah,
which was really unique for me.
Yeah,
it just didn't make sense, and I think it's that like I guess in a sense it's a love thing, how they're brought up when they're with their parents, maybe, but socially, even from school. That like uniqueness or unconformity is kind of cast out.
Yeah,
so I would have really struggled in Japan.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's so fascinating. It's such a really fascinating culture.
So Japan, but the best thing about Japan is, for example, if you have like because they're very easily conformed and, in a sense, structured and organized. If you have a leader that promotes that kind of like good things, let's say, right?
And
the society can change really quickly, in a very, very dramatic way. And there won't be a lot of resistance in a sense, because but in Korea, it's different because Korea always has resistance about everything. So, like America in a sense, but Japan is, if you have that one like, for example, top guy that like does things in a very, not Western way, but in a different way where he cares about his employees' confidence and emotions and things like that. That would just, I mean, they could change things really quickly as a society.
Hey, so with that in mind, I want to go back to Korea quickly, and then I'm gonna ask you this question, and you can keep talking, and I'm gonna change a battery in my camera. So go to the bosses. I want to go back to kind of when you're out with your bosses in Korea, with people who have higher status than you. You go out to dinner, right? Like what? How much do they determine? Like, or how is that to determine? As an American, it must have been really difficult for you, of course, like because you're this person who's just who's been sort of westernized in this mentality of not caring and just being yourself. But how is that?
Oh, for me, it always was strange, but I don't think I ever conformed um, to what the bosses dictated in a sense. If I didn't like something, I just probably didn't do it. But in general, they run the show. They pay the bills. They have the corporate cards. So, um, you know, usually you go where they say, they want to go, and you drink what they say they want to drink, and how much and how frequently and all that stuff. And like if your boss says let's go somewhere and you find that place kind of weird or don't want to go, you're kind of obligated to go. So,
Uh-huh.
and they're very bossy in general. Thank God I didn't have any of those. But I had one that I got into a fight with, but that was another story. But usually my bosses were pretty good. Well, they probably knew that I wasn't going to conform anyway. So
Yeah. So they let you go.
they're like, oh yeah, he's
Let
not
you
gonna
be who
listen
you
anyway.
are.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
So
in general, yeah.
so when you say bossy, yeah, I mean I think that's again, here's the difference in the in the East and the West, right? Like here bosses the idea is to learn from your employees, bring yourself down to the level of your employees, try to really understand things. I mean, when you're in management in the West, in the United States, where you have to hold the line, but the goal is
Yeah,
to,
yeah, I understand that. But sorry for interruption, but so this is a big difference. In America or in the West, you tell your employees to do something. Um, if they don't do it right, you guide them and teach them or whatever. And if they don't do it again, then you try it again, and then you fire them, right? Literally, I
yeah.
mean, you have to, right? You make the decision of firing them, whatever. In Asia, it's more like you try it again in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You try with knowledge, and then you try with emotion, and you try with bonding, and you really, really try to get them to, in a way, conform to your standards, right? Sometimes, that's really helpful for some people because, it's kind of like you're forcing that person who's not capable of doing that into,
Mm-hmm.
you're forcing him up to their standards and really motivating him to like, dude, get drunk together and I knew you can do this, and then that person feels more obligated, closer to his bosses, and that person tries harder, and
So it very much is like, it's like the family thing, right? So if you're a
like older
parent,
brother, younger brother, yeah,
yeah, you have your child and they don't do it right, you work again, you're going to keep trying to do the lesson. And whereas in the US, here's the path, get on the path. If you can't get on the path, we'll find somebody else who can.
exactly.
So, but like a family, you're beholden to the family, and then you have to do things you don't really want to do. Like in a family, you might have to go on vacation or go to grandmother's house or do something. You're like, oh God. But in Korea, you might have to go out drinking after work and like,
Right. Like, for example, when you do like an employee evaluation, one of the things that, like, if you keep firing people, your evaluation goes well in Asia.
uh-huh.
In Western country, it's like, oh, I just couldn't find the right person, with the HR responsibility, you're not getting the right person. But in Asia, if you keep firing the people that are under you, that goes against your evaluation because there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So that's
That
completely different.
you should be able to work with any employee
Yeah,
and
and
bring them into.
find other ways, like other influential ways to motivate them and
Yeah.
get them to do. Yeah,
So it is like a family in the same way, right? Like if you have a child, it's just chance if you and your child actually get along. It's chance. It's so random, you know what I mean? And but where every parent is expected to be the perfect parent with whatever child they have. And you think
yeah,
it's just luck if you get a child that you actually like, first of all,
right.
Or as a child, if you have a parent that you like. I mean, most people I would never want as my parents, and so but I'm stuck with them, so I got to work it
You have
out.
a lot of time as a parent
Yeah.
of guiding them, but you got to do this in very short term of time in work
Yeah.
culture. So
Yeah, right. So once your child is born, you have many years to realize, I think I'm not going to like this child. So,
well, I don't know.
so I got to prepare myself for them.
Well,
Yeah.
it's just I think like like your character formality it
Yeah.
forms like when you're a certain age, right? And it's more malleable when you're younger. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
when you get an adult that has strong character already formed, it's very difficult to change that in an Asian work environment. To
Mm-hmm.
there's only way to do it is to get really close to him and motivate him and you know kind of like be an older brother, but sometimes you have to be a little bossy, but sometimes you have to be very caring and tending and have that person become really like loyal to you in a sense that
Yeah.
like he wants to try more harder for you than
Uh-huh.
abilities.
Yeah, that's so fascinating.
It's really interesting because if you take that little bit of that like a little bit of that I guess work mentality to Western companies, I think it would be great, really
Yeah.
great. Because here is completely like the opposite, right? It's like I
Yeah.
can jump ship whenever I want, kind of thing.
It's interesting. Somebody was asking me about thinking about working on a book on, comparing these two things. And I was
Mhm.
thinking, wow, yeah, that would be really valuable. Hey, what is, so you were in Korea in, probably working in Korea like in the 90s, right?
Yeah, so I went to Korea when I was 1999, I think. It was 98,
Uh huh.
maybe 98. I got my first job at an internet company, and I was selling those. If you remember, like Yahoo had clubs before we
Yeah,
had
yeah, yeah,
Facebook.
yeah.
So this company made these I guess you could say social networking structure software, and we were selling to like Lycos and
Mm-hmm.
these search engines, and then I went to Hong Kong and jumped different jobs everywhere, and I came back to Korea, but I've always been working in Japan, China, Korea, Hong Kong, that area, except once in Dubai.
Mm-hmm. What, before Dubai blew up? Yeah.
I was right there. So the weird thing is, I started working in an IT company, internet bubble pops.
Yeah.
I started working in Dubai real estate. Well, Dubai elevator company that I started. I was a startup, and then and the real estate market goes down. So
Yeah.
it's been a struggle.
I think
Yeah.
my first trip to Dubai was in 2013, I think. 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, you were there earlier than me. Yeah,
Yeah.
or
Hey,
something
so
like
how
that. Definitely.
so you are well, but let me I want to ask about gender a little bit.
Yeah.
And because we're watching in Korea. I mean, really, in many ways, in the East, completely in the East, right? In Korea, Japan, China, we're watching women step up into new roles, right? In the past 30 years or so.
Mhm.
How how does this after work drinking culture involve or not involve women employees? Like, what happens to them when the guys are out drinking?
Well, they usually go home earlier, usually, um, and then the heavy drinkers usually end up becoming the core team. But I heard that when you have a woman boss, um, I never did, but that culture kind of goes away.
Uh huh.
So,
Yeah.
so the team members who want that culture kind of gets left out. They're like, oh, we don't have any place here. We don't have any drinking culture. So it's
Hmm. So they
good
so
and
they
bad.
so they move on to different jobs where they can get it.
Well, no, they see Asians don't really they don't like to switch jobs. Um, their loyalty to the company is still there.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
number of jobs that they have, if you look at their most of the resume, is well, now it's really different, but in my generation, it's far less than say a person in America has usually. But um, before it was lifetime job for in
Yeah.
my father's generation. They would never leave the company. They would just stay in
Yeah.
that company, and the company goes down, then they go down with them. That kind of mentality. But
Yeah.
it's changed a lot in the years. But culturally, women, it's very difficult because, like, in terms of evaluating your team and evaluating your employees, women have different standards than men.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
so, so when I was like evaluating the whole company, that's one of the most difficult things that I had because what they thought was important was not necessarily what the men thought they were important. So
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of it's very different with them.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the areas of life in East Asia that is has the potential to most radically transform work relationships is the
Sure.
gender bringing the gender integration.
Together. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and maybe with that, the other part of maybe the drinking culture would maybe go away a little, but as a whole, like industry, a lot of things could change because when women are bosses, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, some
Yeah.
are good and some are not so good, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything, right? Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, like with the men.
like
Um,
usually male bosses are pushy. That's definitely true. If you look at, so like, if the work time is 9 to 6, which never is, it's usually like 8 to 7 or 8. But like the men will not go home.
mhm, mhm,
And we would say, oh, they don't go home because he's married, but
mhm.
they would just, they would plow through work. And the more work they do, the more work they get.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So, and they would, they have more stamina. But women usually have like more social life outside of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And if
up
they
to
have
you.
children, right?
And
They're
if they have
going to
children,
they'll be responsible for the children and
exactly.
so that really has
So,
an impact on careers too.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Huh.
and and you don't see a lot of women, like doing all nighters at work.
Yeah.
Well, you see a lot of guys doing that. So
Yeah.
as an employer, in certain job descriptions, it's really really difficult to choose women because that certain, like, for example, accounting team, um, they
Uh-huh.
have that audit sessions. They're gonna be in that like for hours, right? So
Yeah.
but lots of like, for example, internal audit.
Mhm.
It's really
Mhm.
difficult to have women in internal auditing, um,
Mhm.
in a higher position in an internal auditing because
Mhm.
women are
Mhm.
generally more I don't know how you say it, but more forgiving, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's really so fascinating.
yeah, and
Who wh- what like so you worked where did you work in China?
I worked in when I was working in Hong Kong with a venture capital
Uh-huh.
company. Um, it was really early, early. I think it was 2000, 2001. So
Uh-huh.
that was kind of interesting. um, but then the companies that I worked had like we had offices in China, like offices in Beijing and Shanghai and Tokyo. So I would travel. It's like hour flights, so it's
Yeah. Yeah,
travel
yeah.
there often. usually you just end up drinking there with the team there
Yeah.
anyway. So, and then you hear their problems and try to make their environment better. And
It's with all the drinking, it's amazing that anything ever gets done.
I know. And they usually get done during the drinking.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is so profound. Yeah.
And like you know how you mentioned like I guess gay or homosexuals.
Uh-huh.
Like all the years that I was in Asia, not one person, and I met thousands of people. I've had hundreds of friends probably, but not one of them came up to me and be like, "I'm gay" or "I'm bi." So
Mm-hmm.
anytime I went to a gay club once, I was drunk, and it was packed. So I knew there were a lot of gay men in Korea,
Yeah.
but it was shocking to see that actually because there's no such thing as bisexuality in Korea or
Yeah.
openness about that. And we would go to saunas. Going to a sauna with your friends is one of those very social things.
Yeah.
And if you're aware of that, then I guess like, oh, what if this guy looks at me and thinks I'm it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's why they don't talk about it. But yeah, I've never met. Well, none of my friends were like that, so I don't know.
I think what you're saying though is really key. That has also been my experience. I've always been fascinated by going into finding a gay bar,
Yeah.
and so nobody's gay, and then I walk through the doors of a gay bar and it's packed, and I think,
Right.
okay, well, clearly people are gay, and so
Exactly.
and which is true of obviously around the world, but it's so fascinating to to hear you say that in all your years nobody ever indicated that to you that they were gay, and yet here are these clubs and places where people socialize. And
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of transgender.
yeah, yeah,
I've seen many of them, but
yeah, somehow that becomes more acceptable across the board, right? That it's somehow much more acceptable to for me to dress as a woman, more acceptable to do that, even be in public and whatever, than it would be for me to have a sexual relationship with a man.
yeah.
Right? Today it's different because in the United States anyway, it's very different. But historically, it's
Well, in
even
Asia, especially Korea, I've seen transsexual women who's had complete surgery. I'm sorry, transsexual men that are like completely beautiful. Like you can't even tell they've had any surgery. Some of them.
Yeah. The classic perception of beauty. Yeah.
Yeah, the classic Korean, let's say, perception of beauty.
Yeah.
Which is very slender, very small boned, and whatever, right? And one time I went to this transsexual. I didn't know it was a transsexual bar, but she told me she was like she's a transsexual. I just couldn't believe it because I couldn't even tell. I mean, 100% I could tell, but this one was like there was no way that she could have been a man before. Like there's no way, right? And I've seen celebrities and movie stars. There was no way this person was a man before, and it just blew my mind actually because
yeah. Well, and now you think about, so someone just put in the chat about South Korea being so advanced in plastic surgery.
Exactly.
Yeah, and now the leaders in the world, right? Just with all the eye jobs and the nose jobs and the, it's so.
So what's happening in Korea is men are getting it now.
Yeah.
And the age is becoming non-issue because you have these really like old guys that look really young through all the surgery.
Yeah.
And they work out a lot every day and they're all fit and all healthy.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you can't tell how old they are at all.
Yeah.
Or what sex they are. So, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, and what you're saying is, your experience is that that's really accepted.
It's becoming more and more accepted in Korea.
Yeah. Same
And
here.
then, and it's translating to other countries as well.
You know,
In the US.
so women and men, so people who are trans have, I mean, there are very high rates of violence against people who are trans. Relatively speaking, right? Yeah. So, around the world, right? So assault rates and murder rates and so on. And yet, so even with that, I mean, that's, it's still the level of acceptance is just tremendously high.
In Korea, they're completely accepted.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you can't tell.
Yeah.
You literally cannot tell if they're transsexual or not because this level of surgery, technology is so high. So we're talking about two different issues here. One is age and one is sex, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to live longer and look younger, be healthier. So, they're defining time in that way. And the other one is that, they're looking for, they want to become the other sex and experience the other sex. So they're changing with technology also. It's, I don't know how the result of that is, but definitely things are not the same. Like if you meet a girl, you have to do a genome test or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's so fascinating to see the
it's very interesting.
Yeah, just how things transform and how they change, and my God, you really just wonder what's coming at us,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, really, what's coming at us.
It's kind of scary because what's happening is that you don't know what you're dealing with. That's the whole point, right?
Yep.
You don't know if it's a man or a woman or how old he is or how old she is or if there's a robot or whatever it is, right? Partly, all the synthetic stuff. So like breast implants, right? A lot of Korean women have breast implants, right?
Yeah.
So back in the day, you could definitely tell just by looking at them. Now you can't even tell when you touch them.
Yeah.
There's no way you can tell.
Yeah.
Because it's completely, it's probably better than natural in a sense.
Yeah. It's so fascinating, right? This is like the human beings, where will we be in 50 years when all of us, so many of us, are just changing our bodies constantly, right? And then we're being socialized that, increasingly we will grow up that it won't matter. More and more of us will accept being bisexual, so that, my last girlfriend, boyfriend was a man, but is now a woman, and then, but we won't even talk about it that way. It just won't matter. People will just move from one to another.
Yeah. And, if you think about that age thing again, there's the biosynthetic of the external.
Yeah.
But then if you look at China, they're doing that organ transplants, right?
Yeah.
And pretty soon it's going to be replaced with synthetic organs, probably, right?
Yeah.
So
which we already have. Yeah.
But, Chinese are doing it because it's, organ harvesting because it's cheaper and they can do all that stuff. But hopefully they're not. But, they're changing the inside. So you're actually changing your entire body to become younger.
Yeah.
And I actually think it will have some kind of psychological problem.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to adjust to that. We'll have to find a way to adjust our consciousness to these changes because it won't be easy.
Well, not us in terms of the society, but like the people who are changing themselves.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yep.
Unless they can replace their brain, or I mean, even replacing their brain, it's not going to change how because your memories will get all messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You will lose your identity of who you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Am I a man or a woman? Or I have all these foreign parts everywhere, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, this is I know this is why actually want to pause my life right now and come back in 75 years, Let's just see what happens. And yeah,
I
it'd be
mean,
really cool.
there, in everything, this is, one of the things I learned in Asian culture or the Asian, well, not only Asian culture, but there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it, right? And the right way to fight age is, eat the right stuff and keep yourself healthy and,
Yeah.
exercise and, keep your mind young,
Uh-huh.
don't be like, that's the right way to do it, I guess. And with the sex, not be so discriminating sexually, with
Mm-hmm.
polar opposite views in generalizing. You kind of look at people, if you look at a man because he looks all masculine, you can't just be like his inside is all masculine. You look at a woman who's very feminine, you can't assume that
Mm-hmm.
she's as aggressive as some men
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
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 So I think that's the right way of kind of doing it, but there's a lot of mechanical and synthetic way of doing it that way and doing this way.
Yeah.
I mean, and this one is winning by far.
Yeah, for sure. And there are lots of ethical issues that will come into play, right? I mean,
Sure, sure.
that how we do that. But even look at the like in Korea with K-pop,
Yeah.
the men, the boys. I mean, some are men, some are in their late 20s, but they look like boys. And
Yes, yes.
this is like this is a vision of masculinity that increasingly people are being socialized to go toward.
Yeah.
And so it's only a matter of time between when more and more men are wearing makeup and more men are not not having big muscles and big features and so on. And like, it's hard for people in the West to really imagine. They look at, the K-pop stars, the boy stars
Right.
or boy bands or men bands. And it's hard for people in the West to really see like, whoa, those are status symbols of masculinity. It's like, whoa.
Well,
The
first of
girls,
all,
the girls who like with my students, I tell them sometimes, listen, the Korean women who you would find really attractive, they find these guys attractive, right?
yeah, I
So
remember that.
you need to go out and get some makeup and figure out how to do your hair and wear the right clothes, and like then these women might be attracted to you. But right now they're attracted to these
Fashionable.
guys.
Care about what you wear. Be
Yeah,
fashionable.
yeah,
Work out.
you
Lose
can't come to
weight.
class. Exactly. You cannot come to class in your sweatpants. Like you have to spend at least an hour getting ready,
Right.
ironing your clothes, putting your makeup on, right?
You know what? No, it's like it's completely. Some of the things in Korea are completely absurd. Like they would have these yuhang. So yuhang is kind of like the fad, and one celebrity would wear this very expensive $2,000 coat, and just take some pictures with it. Next month, everybody's wearing this $2,000 coat. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where are you going? And like, you don't have one? Like, you have money. Why don't you buy one? I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's like, oh, what's wrong with your skin? You have so many freckles. Get some treatment. Things like that are
Yeah.
normal things you hear in Asia. And I would be like, can you just shut up?
Yeah. Right, exactly. So you've grown here, you are coming from the US as a typical like a US guy who would just be himself. Like, oh my God, it's really absurd. I know my wife has had to train me really hard to pay attention to the way I wear my clothes, and I'm not easily trained, so I fail most of the time. My
I'm
hair,
untrainable.
everything. God.
Untrainable.
Yeah. But you're a hair guy. I mean, you have a lot of hair.
Oh no, I had a lot of hair. I cut it with my scissor.
Yeah. But it's thick. You know what I mean?
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's really my wife would call you a hair guy, right? So,
Really?
yeah. Just
Okay.
someone with lots of thick hair that.
Well, I haven't been to a barber or hair salon, whatever, the place where you get your haircut in like 2 years. So I
Whoa.
don't think I don't think you can call me a hair guy. I cut
Yeah.
my own hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, it
it's
does.
very.
Yeah.
It's
You
not,
just
some
have.
companies are.
Yeah. You just have a lot of it. You know what I
I guess
mean? Yeah.
I don't know, but some things are crazy in Korea. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money they spend on stupid stuff is it's just really funny to me. I would rather
Yeah.
spend it on drinking
Yeah.
than to feel good about myself wearing a expensive coat or some brand. But
Yeah.
that's very normal in Korea. It's very
Yeah.
like oh you have it, oh cool, let me get it.
Yeah. 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 It's really funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if you can take just best practices of different things in the world and just bring it to US, I think we would be great, really.
Yeah. I think so. I think
And
that
I think, and
yeah.
then we are actually the only country in the world that can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That can do that without much like social uprising and cultural craziness, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I'm with you.
if you're trying to bring cannabis to Korea, you will have complete resistance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
From top to down, they'll go nuts, right? Meanwhile,
Yeah.
they're all doing crystal meth over there, like hidden in the clubs, right?
Yeah.
So it's but like if you take best practices of certain things in Korea, you can bring it here. To take it from different cultures, even family aspects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why America is, we're actually very flexible with that kind of stuff. And I think,
Yeah.
and some of things are happening, like education things are coming from Korea, some food maybe coming from Korea, and maybe take some technology from Japan.
Hey, listen, I bought some kimchi at Trader Joe's. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, yeah.
So there you go. Like
There you
it's
go. Yeah.
in a little plastic container. So
Yeah.
like, all right, we got it.
It's
Hey,
Korea is just. Oh, you go ahead, sorry. Yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say like you would go to like a coffee shop in Korea, a cafe, right?
Yeah.
And order two lattes and some waffle, right? And you would have to pay $70.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of like the hip thing to do in Korea.
Yeah. Yeah. That means you're cool.
That means
Yeah.
like, oh, you're there, right? Where
Yeah.
celebrities might show up and stuff.
Yeah.
But here it's like, are you crazy?
Yeah. 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 No, I don't live like that. That's the same in the Middle East. You got to be
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
in lots of places, right? You got to be seen at the hip spots. And I'm like, no, I got to be seen at the place that has good food, good coffee, good beer. Cold beer is cold beer. It doesn't matter where I get it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And Japanese take that to a complete new level where
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
they go to these drinking places and they hop the room salons.
Yeah.
And I've hopped like 3 room salons in one night, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
This is not fun.
Yeah.
And you're spending like $10,000. I
Yeah.
don't understand. And they're dropping like 10 grand each, and I'm going, what are you doing? I want to
Yeah.
stay. That
That's
girl
just
was hot.
so.
What are you doing?
It's so crazy. Yeah.
It's absolutely not. And then they're like, I have to show my face, whatever. I'm going,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't. That would be really tough. It would be
Really
impossible for me. Even if I had the money, I wouldn't be able to do it.
I mean, why it doesn't make you don't have any fun. You don't. There's no upside to it.
no,
They
no.
do it for like, I guess, to increase their testosterone.
Yeah. That's one way to do it. You could get a shot in the arm, or you could just spend a lot of money.
I would say to receive more false love.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Hey, so you're locked in quarantine. Do you are you working from home? Is this?
Yeah. Thankfully, my job. I'm an environmental consultant, so I have like
Uh-huh.
a couple different construction sites, and these things are just going on for years. So I get a little bit of money, from little bit by a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy.
Yeah.
Phew, it's hard to. Last night I was having a conversation with some colleagues about where we're going to go with this virus, and man, I don't know. It's not going to go away. We're going to just keep dealing with variations of it. And I just saw that this person who just got a vaccination a week later tested positive for the virus, and I thought, oh
China.
shit, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like so. When I was in Asia, I think the first one I was in Korea, and I'm kind of like I don't really care about like I don't really fear those diseases per se as much as
Mm-hmm.
other people do. First one I saw was I think it was avian flu. There was a news like 20 years ago, drinking till like 3, 4 in the morning, being as dirty as you can be, right? And the next one was MERS, I think. And there's a different variant, I remember. And everybody was taking Tamiflu, that medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Tamiflu
yeah.
was, I think if there were 50 million people in Korea, I think they sold like 50 million Tamiflu because everybody took one. And I
Yeah.
even bought one because everybody was taking one. Like, you gotta take it, you gotta take it. And I bought one and I was like, oh, forget it. I forgot to take it. And I was living my life exactly the same way. No mask, drinking till like 3, 4 in the morning. So after two of them, another one came, SARS came. And SARS was a big one. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and everybody's going nuts again. And I'm going, wait a minute, if I live that way and drinking to like every day for that long, and I didn't get anything, I didn't wear a mask, and I was, all these bars with all these people and clubs and meeting hundreds of girls a night probably, and I didn't get anything, so I'm not gonna do anything for this one. So I did the same thing with SARS, and I never got sick. So I was like, all right, forget that. So I started doing research.
Uh-huh.
Like, what is this? What is this virus? And I had a little bit of background in biology, so. And I found out there were coronaviruses. So when this one came, I was like, all right, I must have some kind of immunity. So I was like, forget it. And I called the township. I was like, look, listen, this is complete bullshit. I've had experience with the coronavirus. I went to my kid's school. I was like, this is not gonna, and I went through this and, I never got sick. So I don't know what's going on, but if it's a coronavirus, then we've had coronaviruses before.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
several hundred variants already. Like,
Yeah.
it's been here already
Yeah.
for like hundreds of years, probably.
Yeah.
So my opinion was, okay, you gotta just leave it up to God, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I never got sick from those three. So
It's so yeah.
I
No,
just didn't.
yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah.
Just because the fact that I was living that kind of lifestyle. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
you don't understand. I was drinking till like 4 or 5 in the morning,
Yep. Yep.
and the club culture in Korea is very different.
Yep.
You meet a lot of people. You interact with a lot of people in Korea. So I must have gotten it. There's no way I could have avoided this virus.
Yeah. Yep.
If I
Yep.
didn't get sick from it, then I'm not gonna get sick from this. That's my mentality about it. So
Yeah. I think that, I mean, it clearly some people are either A, immune, or B, semi-immune somehow, that when they get it, it doesn't really impact them in the same way.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't know how to really explain that. I mean, we know this thing affects different pieces of your body, different parts of your body, you know, your lungs, your heart, your mind, your et cetera, your brain, but
yeah.
something's
Maybe
happening.
something else. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe the virus. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we need to know a lot more.
Maybe
Yeah.
we named it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a coronavirus. Maybe something else.
Yeah, I just kind of sit back with great puzzlement. Actually, I don't want to get it. That's for sure. So I wear a mask, and I'm like, hey, man, I don't, whatever it is, I don't want to get it because I don't think I'm immune to it. But
There's no way a mask can stop a virus. There's
yeah,
no
I
way
know
in the
it's
world. It just
the
makes
mask is
the other
gonna
person feel more, like
even that. I
secure.
know exactly. I have the idea that. Then I read the story of the person who does everything right, and they wear a mask, and they do this, and they do that, and they still get it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how? What is this? This is one of the great mysteries of life.
Whatever it is, it's definitely not a coronavirus. Because if it was, then not this many people would be sick from it.
Yeah.
We've always had coronavirus variants, and it's always mutating. So.
Yeah. And right, what would we be? Someone just asked, like, how many deaths would there be if everyone was really in good physical shape and we ate vegetables instead of so much meat?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe we'd find ourselves that we'd be in a really different position.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of things, in the East, they don't even think it's significant anymore. But the idea of chi, the internal energy,
exactly. Yep.
that's something that's always interested me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of like, when I read something, I'm like, I get the factual part of it, but I discard the things that are not factual and their assumptions. I try to discard them.
Yeah.
So I would study chi and be like, okay, so the effects of the chi that are in my body, and if I practice, I can feel it. But what they say it's from and all the assumptions they make, I throw it out. So
yeah.
So the chi is definitely there, and how to cultivate it is. There are ways to cultivate it, but what they say it is, it's not. I don't think it's right. So, I think it's more like gift from God in a sense.
Yeah, well, so when you think about chi and energy and breath and the power, it's there's something complex and fascinating happening in the human body.
Has to come to Western culture, and I think that's very important because, well, actually, not only Western culture, but go back to the Eastern culture as well, because they completely lost it.
Yeah.
Nobody does that,
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a Falun Gong people, maybe.
Yeah.
So
well, I have this idea that, we talk about ancient, like teachings, right? Like, so it's 5,000 years old. So if you look at, acupuncture and chi and working with chi and in China, so this goes back, 3,000 years. And I think, well, that doesn't make it accurate. Like, it doesn't make it real. It's 5,000 years ago. Just because doesn't mean that people back then knew something, unless they were visited by aliens, or somehow somewhere they discovered some kind of knowledge that came from something, right? That was extraterrestrial. It was beyond human beings.
Exactly.
That otherwise, it's not inherently truth. But people walk around in the modern world, and we say, okay, well, this is a 1,000-year-old thought system. Like, okay, well, people thought the Earth was flat back then too, so like it doesn't really mean it's true.
Right.
So I'm always the skeptic about everything, right?
Me too.
And so I have the idea, if I look at the coronavirus, I think, well, I know that in 50 years or in 100 years, we will look back and understand what was happening right now, what this virus was, how we transmitted it, why some people got it and they didn't get sick and other people got sick, right? How it is that some people transmitted it very easily and other people very difficult.
Right.
And they're going to know so much about what was going on. And so I have to live with this idea right now that, well, we're limited in what we're able to know. So we can just do the best we can do. So,
Right. So one of the things that I always do with my weird, upbringing is that I always look at the common things, like common practices, right? Like of different cultures, right? And religions, right?
Yep.
What is this common practice of religion, qi, Taoism,
Yep.
and all these things, right? Well, if you go back and back, and like go back to Orthodox Christianity, even before that, you realize that most people were vegetarian. Most people were vegetarian, and they ate, I guess, fish and seafood a little bit, but predominantly they were vegetarian, and they always guarded their sexuality.
Yeah.
So what that means is that, like, you don't let your bodily fluids out like the Western, like American culture does. Like that and this is lost not only in Western culture but everywhere in the Eastern culture. Nobody does this anymore. So the idea of just like just having sex and just doing your thing and it doesn't affect you is like this huge modern idea that recently arose.
Yeah.
So in ancient Korea, the way people had sex, now we're getting really weird, but I'm just going to say it. The way they had sex was no lights were on and not much interpersonality. So, and definitely not losing the fluid unless it's to reproduce. So, and this practice, and they're all vegetarian.
Yeah.
Long time ago. This is like way back. So the reason why they turned the light off is because you have to guard your eyes against, you look at certain things and your eyes look at it and you get sexually attracted to it, right?
Yeah.
So it's to kind of downplay that.
Yeah.
So you see it, but you don't see it. It's not completely dark, but through moonlight, whatever. But you don't focus on that, right? Like how Western culture now we became like big breasts and big ass, and we focus on that. And when you look at a girl, you look at that part, right? And then So that's where you're guarding against your eyes, right? So, and the reason with vegetarian is because when you eat, you get more aggressive. That's just natural. Because you have a lot of more of that. In terms of chi, you're taking a lot more chi.
Yeah. Right, you're taking chi from other life forms.
Animals.
The higher,
animal chi.
Yeah, animal chi, yep.
Different than a plant chi. They're different. So that was for that. And then what was I saying? Bad memory. Like for example, not telling lies. It's
Yeah.
also completely chi related. I'm talking about Eastern idea. So when you tell a lie, your internal chi and you're thinking something else and you're saying something else. And in the Western perspective, you're saying there's an enmity, and then or something is blocking you. There's some kind of blockage that comes in you,
Uh-huh.
and you're saying something that you're not thinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're talking about Christianity way, it's like devil coming in or a bad spirit coming. But you look at it as a Eastern way, it's like you're blocking your chi, basically, right?
Yeah.
To flow in the right direction, right? And like doing not killing and not stealing, same thing. You do something and you plays in your conscience, and it plays in your subconscious without even you knowing it, and it disturbs the internal flow, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there are these practices that completely lost in Eastern society right now, completely gone, because they're completely opposite of it. Actually,
Yeah.
America's much more close to it than they are. They're going way the other direction. And the revival has to come, I think, from here, because there's no way they can do it from, except maybe North Korea. Well,
Yeah.
to get rid
Yeah.
of it. Maybe Japan. Japan might actually work, but they have to see something.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. So
Yeah. No, I think
but
that's.
the reason why they do it is because it not only guards you against the flow of chi, but they actually thought that when your chi gets weak, that's when you get sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your chi, or I would say God in the Western word, it is your ultimate kind of protection.
Yep. And chi is the alignment of mind, body, spirit.
Yeah, exactly.
And the alignment is most powerfully expressed through our breath and our thoughts and our senses.
Actions.
Yeah, actions, yeah. And that's the Eastern that's that Eastern philosophy that is so powerful. Yeah. It's so powerful.
They had God before.
Yeah.
That was completely aligned with the Western Christianity, but this was taken out of context.
Yep. Yeah.
So they lost that practice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that plays a role here, and it's playing a role with this virus, but we can't measure that, so in the West it's really difficult for us to medicalize it because we can't quantify and measure chi. How do you measure chi?
You just feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't. Maybe
I could show it to you a little bit, but
yeah, Falun Gong, maybe they can measure it.
Yeah, maybe they can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's what makes all of this so remarkable, actually. Yeah. But, and in the end, I just sit back at night in the evening and I open up a beer and I have a beer and I say, okay, here it is. Yeah, that's the best I can do. Yeah. And then the next day I start all over again trying to understand the world in a more complicated way. And then, I get a little bit and then at night I have another beer and okay. But just one.
Well, I mean, I don't even know how alcohol plays into that, but I mean, I'm a smoker. So I smoke.
Yeah.
Instead of you drinking beer, I smoke like a cigarette probably. But
wait, cigarettes or cannabis or marijuana?
I haven't smoked cannabis in a while.
But. All right. Okay. So tobacco. Yeah. See, tobacco's got to be really bad for your chi.
It must be. It must be. But I got to have something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. It's probably better than soju every night.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The soju's bad.
Yeah.
She always gets me like really worked up.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like I gotta do something when I'm
Yeah.
drinking soju. I
Yeah.
gotta do the next round, you know?
Yeah. That's why people drink so much of it.
Yeah, and I start calling my friends and they all come out and we
Yeah.
gather.
Yeah.
Fun, but
All right. Well,
it's
listen, I'm going to cut here because
okay.
I have to go take a run an errand. So,
Okay. It
it's,
was really
hey,
nice talking
yeah,
to
it's
you.
good talking to you. Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
nice
It's
meeting
really
you.
interesting. I
Yeah.
think,
Well,
because, sometimes, I mean, people like yourself have a lifetime of history, of experience. And the lifetime of experience really means that you have something to teach and something to say. Yeah. Yeah.
well, I think a lot of my experiences were not so positive, so I would like to teach it without other people going through it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, someone just said on the chat that, you've been really great to listen to, and we need to have round two at some other time. So, all right,
Well,
maybe
anytime.
we'll have round two when you can talk about all the bad experiences.
Oh God.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that with some of my young male students
Yeah,
who,
and in closing, that way of Taoist life or Christian life, that common core, is
yeah,
supposed to be defense against everything,
yeah,
like time, um, cancer, what all the viruses, whatever,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
everything else that comes at you. It's supposed to be the shield. It could be
yeah,
the shield if you practice it right. So,
yeah.
yeah,
No, that's cool. Well, I
appreciate that.
appreciate you. Yeah,
No
I
problem.
appreciate you talking. Thanks for reaching out to me
I have
because,
no idea what I said, so maybe I can watch this
yeah,
someday.
yeah.
I have really bad memory. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good that you're a retirement,
didn't feel
financial
like didn't
a
feel like
financial
using this last
advisor.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Listen. Hey, so Leo, thanks. I appreciate it. So we'll
Thank
be in
you.
touch.
All right.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Be well.
All right.
All right. Ciao.
Bye.
Hey, so yeah, Julius Caesar 323. Yeah, exactly. Really fascinating person. Um, he reached out to me. Just he had watched a couple of my videos on Korea and reached out to me, and once we started chatting back and forth, I realized, oh man, you're like really fascinating. Let's come on the stream and just have a conversation and see where it goes. Okay, well, listen, Happy New Year, and I'm gonna be out, go on and do my thing, as we say.